Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that Abraham Lincoln carried important papers inside his stovepipe hat? Learn how, as an attorney, Lincoln used an almanac to show astronomical data that there was no moon in the sky on the night of a crime, proving that a man accused of murder was innocent. See how President Lincoln used the Emancipation Proclamation to free slaves. And in response, nearly 180,000 African Americans served in the Union Army during the Civil War.
Okay, so it is officially February 12th. And that means somewhere a calendar is marked Lincoln's birthday.
Right. And you immediately think of the penny or the $5 bill.
Or that huge marble statue in Washington, D.C., just this giant silent figure.
Exactly, the statue Lincoln. Stoic, unmovable. You look at that and it feels like he was just, born a 50-year-old president.
That's exactly.
Oh, okay.
But the mission today is to kind of chip the marble off that guy. We want to find the actual human being underneath.
Oh, for sure. Because when you dig into the sources, the biographies, the legal records, personal accounts, the man you find is just infinitely more interesting.
Surprising is the word that comes to mind.
Absolutely. We're talking about someone who came from literally a one-room cabin in the backwoods and became a national martyr. But the journey there, it involves true crime, mystical premonitions, deep depression, and yes, a wrestling career.
You cannot forget the wrestling. That's my favorite part. But the real tension we want to get into is how a man with almost no formal education becomes one of the most eloquent leaders in history.
Right when the country was literally tearing itself apart.
So you have a nation threatening to split into two separate countries, and the person holding it together is this lanky, self-taught lawyer.
That's a whole question. How does that specific person meet that specific terrible moment?
So let's go back to the beginning. Because humble beginnings doesn't even begin to cover it for Lincoln.
It feels like a massive understatement. We hear log cabin and we think, rustic charm. The reality was much, much harsher.
Born February 12, 1809, in Kentucky.
But the sources don't just focus on the poverty, do they? They talk about the loss.
So much loss. He really defined his early life. I think we forget that.
We know about the end of his life, but the beginning was just as dark. It was bleak. He had an older sister, Sarah, and a younger brother, Thomas, who died as a baby. Then the family moves to Indiana. It's a brutal environment. Abe is 8 years old, learning to use an axe.
Just survival mode.
Total survival mode. And then, when he's only 9, his mother, Nancy, dies.
9? Wow. That's world-shattering for a kid.
He actually called that time the unhappiest period of his young life. And you have to imagine it's just him, his sister Sarah, who also dies later, by the way, and his father.
And the relationship with his father was
very strained. Thomas Lincoln was a hard man. He didn't see the point of books, of reading.
So you've got a grieving 9-year-old, a distant father who thinks reading is a waste of time. But then the story pivots. A new character arrives.
Enter Sarah Johnston. About a year later, his father goes back to Kentucky and marries her. She was a widow with 3 kids of her own.
And they all move into this tiny cabin. That sounds like it would be chaos.
It should have been. But every source agrees on this. She brought love. She brought order. Lincoln called her his angel mother.
His angel mother.
And she felt the same way. Years later, after he was gone, she gave this incredible quote. She said, "Abe was the best boy I ever saw."
Wow. That hits hard.
She also said, "Abe never gave me a cross word or look." It just completely challenges that stern wartime image we have of him.
And she's the one who really encouraged his education. Because this is the part I really struggle to wrap my head around. How does a boy in the middle of nowhere get educated?
By littles?
By littles.
That's what Lincoln said. He went to school by littles. A few weeks here, a month there. If you add it all up, it's less than a single year of formal schooling.
So for anyone listening who feels insecure about their background or their degree...
He is the patron saint of the self-taught. He basically downloaded an education through sheer willpower. He admitted later, he said, "Somehow I could read, write, and cipher to the rule of 3, but that was all."
Okay, hold on. Cipher to the rule of 3. I've seen that phrase. What exactly is that?
It sounds so mystical, doesn't it?
It does.
It's actually just old school math. Ratios. If 2 apples cost 10 cents, how much do 5 apples cost?
Oh, okay. Cross multiplication.
That's it. It was pretty much all the math you needed for trade on the frontier.
So his math was basic, but the reading, that's where he really went deep.
Deep is an understatement. The sources say he would walk for miles, literally miles, just to borrow one book.
And look at what he was reading. Pilgrim's Progress, Aesop's Fables.
Robinson Crusoe. I mean, these are not light reads. They're dense, moral, complex books. And because he had so few, he read them over and over.
He was absorbing them.
He was absorbing the sentence structures. He wasn't just reading for the story. He was learning how to build an argument, how to construct a thought.
Which makes so much sense when you hear speeches later. They have that almost biblical rhythm.
Exactly. But here's the pivot I love. While he's training his brain, he is also, well, he's becoming this physical powerhouse.
The Jock Lincoln era. I love this part.
It's incredible. By age 21, he's 6'4". The average height for a man back then was maybe 5'7". He was a giant.
And strong from splitting rails his whole life.
Oh.
And the sources say he was a wrestling champion.
Oh, yeah. There are stories of him grabbing the local tough guy by the throat and just hoisting him off the ground. He was physically intimidating. And he used that image, the rail splitter, in his campaigns. It told voters, I'm one of you.
It's such a great contrast. Reading Aesop by the fire at night, throwing guys around during the day. But he clearly didn't want to be a farmer forever.
No, he tried everything to get away from it. He was a storekeeper, a postmaster, a surveyor, just scrambling. And that scramble eventually led him to the law.
And again, no formal law school.
Nope. He borrowed the books, laid on the floor, and just read until he understood them. Passed the bar, and set up a practice in Springfield, Illinois.
And this wasn't an office job. This is where circuit writing comes in.
Right, and this is so important. The court traveled. So the judge and all the lawyers would get on their horses and ride hundreds of miles, town to town, hearing cases.
A traveling roadshow of justice.
Pretty much. And Lincoln was the star of the show, after hours. They'd all stay in these taverns, and he would just hold court telling stories and jokes. He was building his network one tavern at a time.
But he was also a seriously sharp lawyer. We have to talk about the Almanac trial. Reading about it felt like a scene from a TV show.
The Duff Armstrong murder case. Yes,
Yeah.
It's the perfect example of his logic.
So set the scene.
Okay, so Lincoln is defending a young man charged with murder, the son of a friend. The prosecution has a star witness who claims, I saw him strike the fatal blow.
And the question is, how could you see? It was the middle of the night.
Exactly. And the witness has this killer line. He says, I saw it clearly by the light of the moon. He claims the moon was high and bright.
Okay, so Lincoln gets up, and he pulls out a farmer's almanac.
The Farmer's Almanac for the year of the murder. He turns to the exact date, and he shows the jury that on that specific night, at that hour, the moon had already set.
So there was no light.
It was pitch black, the witness was lying.
And the verdict.
Acquittal. The courtroom just erupted. It's such a great moment because it shows he wasn't just a folksy storyteller, he was meticulous. He used cold, hard data.
And that reputation for being honest Abe, the logical genius, that's what gets him into politics.
From the circuit to the Illinois General Assembly, then one term in Congress, and finally the 1860 presidential election.
What he wins. But talk about a bad first day at the office.
The worst in history. His election is the final trigger. The minute the results are known, the southern slaveholding states start seceding.
So he hasn't even moved into the White House, and the country is just dissolving.
By April 1861, just over a month in, the cannons fire on Fort Sumter. The Civil War starts. He inherits the apocalypse.
And this is where his unique voice really matters. The sources say his speeches were different.
He didn't sound like a politician of the era. They were all so flowery and formal. Lincoln spoke with this incredible clarity. He spoke like he was arguing a case to a jury of farmers.
And he used that voice to deliver the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1863.
A huge turning point. The text declared, all persons held as slaves within the rebel states are, and henceforward shall be free.
But we should be clear here, because the sources are specific. This didn't free every enslaved person immediately.
That's a really important nuance. It was a war measure, so it only applied to the states in rebellion. It didn't apply to the border states that had stayed in the Union.
He couldn't risk them leaving, too.
Exactly. Total legal abolition across the whole country needed the 13th Amendment, which came in 1865.
But the impact of the proclamation itself was still massive.
Oh, profound. It changed the entire meaning of the war. It became a moral crusade against slavery. And practically, it meant African-American soldiers could enlist.
And they did. About 180,000 in the Army, 18,000 in the Navy.
That's almost 200,000 fresh troops fighting for their own freedom. That completely tips the scales.
And while all this is happening, he's also building the modern U.S. government.
This is the boring but important stuff.
Right.
He signs the laws for the national banking system, creating a unified currency. He establishes the Department of Agriculture.
The Department of Agriculture, in the middle of a war.
He called it the People's Department. He knew the country needed farming science to grow. He was building the future while trying to save the present.
The level of multitasking is I can't even comprehend it. But let's pivot back to the man. All that weight had to take a personal toll.
And it did, a huge one. He married Mary Todd in 1842. She was brilliant, well-educated, but also very volatile. Their marriage was stormy.
And the tragic losses that started his life just continued, didn't they?
It's heartbreaking. They had 4 sons. Only one, Robert, survived to adulthood. Their son Eddie died at age 4. And then Willie, he died in the White House during the war at age 11.
Can you imagine? You're reading casualty reports from the battlefield, and then you have to go upstairs because your own son is dying.
The grief was overwhelming. The sources are pretty clear that Lincoln suffered from what they called melancholy. We would probably call it clinical depression today.
So how did he cope with that? Did he lean on faith? His religion seems complicated.
It is very complicated. He never officially joined a church. He avoided dogma. But he knew the Bible inside and out. He quoted it constantly. A house divided. That's from Scripture.
And he had that specific credo, right? The kind of church he would join.
Yes, he said he would join any church whose only rule for membership was to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and thy neighbor as thyself.
Love God, love your neighbor. That's the whole list.
That's it. It shows a man who was obsessed with the moral core of faith, not the rituals, and love thy neighbor was his political North Star, even when his neighbor was shooting at him.
And yet, through all this darkness, he was funny. He was a bit of a weird guy.
He was very weird. He was famous for telling jokes to braid the tension in serious meetings. He'd say, that reminds me of a story, and everyone would just relax.
And the hat. We have to talk about the hat.
The stovepipe hat. It wasn't just for looks. It was his briefcase.
He actually kept papers in there.
He did. Letters, legal notes, reminders. He'd stick them inside the lining. So he was literally carrying his office around on his head.
That is such a humanizing detail. It makes him feel real.
Exactly. Brilliant, but also a bit messy. A bit eccentric.
Okay, so we have the humor, the tragedy, the policy. But the sources also mention something that honestly gave me chills. The premonition.
This is where the story gets really uncanny. Multiple people reported this. Lincoln had a dream just a few days before he was killed.
This is April 1865. The war is basically over.
Right. The mood should be celebratory, but he has this nightmare. In the dream, he's walking through the White House late at night, and he hears sobbing.
Sounds like a ghost story.
It does. He follows the sound to the East Room,
Okay.
and there he sees a catafalque, a platform for a coffin.
Mm-hmm.
And there are soldiers standing guard and people weeping.
And he asks them.
He asks one of the soldiers who is dead in the White House, and the soldier replies, the president. He was killed by an assassin.
Wow. I mean, that makes the hair on your arm stand up.
And get this. The sources say he told his wife and his bodyguard about this dream on the very day he went to the theater.
April 14th, 1865. The day of.
The day of. He was clearly haunted by it, but he went anyway.
To Ford's Theater. To see a comedy. He just wanted a break.
He wanted to laugh. And that's where John Wilkes Booth shot him. He died the next morning.
It's the ultimate tragedy. He saves the country, but doesn't get to see the peace.
He crosses the finish line and just collapses. The morning that followed was on a scale that's hard to imagine now.
They put his body on a train, right, to take him back to Illinois.
A funeral train. It traveled 1,770 miles across 7 states.
And millions of people came out to see it pass.
Millions. They lined the tracks day and night with bonfires and hymns. It was this shared national trauma.
And there's that one final heartbreaking detail from the funeral procession in Springfield. The horse.
Old Bob.
Old Bob.
Lincoln's favorite horse from his circuit riding days. They draped him in a black mourning blanket, and he walked behind the hearse, riderless.
That image just drives it all home.
It brings it all full circle, doesn't it? The boy from the woods, the lawyer on horseback, finally coming home to rest in the soil of Illinois.
So when we step back from it all, the boy reading by the fire, the lawyer with the almanac, the president, what's the final synthesis?
I think you're left with this rare dual legacy. On one hand, you have the political genius, the savior of the Union. That's the statue.
But on the other hand,
You have the self-made man, the ultimate example of someone who refused to be defined by his circumstances. He just never, ever stopped learning.
which brings us to the question we want to leave you with. We've talked about these habits that made Lincoln who he was.
Right, there's that intense hunger for reading and knowledge, the discipline, and then there's the moral philosophy, that radical empathy of love thy neighbor.
So here's the thought for you, the listener. If you had to pick one of those Lincoln traits to apply to your life right now, which one is more urgent for you?
Is it the deep work, the discipline to educate yourself and find the truth like he did with that almanac? Or is it the empathy, the ability to look at a divided world and choose to love your neighbor anyway?
That is a tough one. I think it's the empathy for me,
Yeah.
but I might need a long walk to really think about it.
Just don't forget your hat.
With a little to paperwork. And hey, if you want a great visual summary of all this, the sources recommend a short biography video. It's about 4 minutes long and really brings his life to life.
Definitely worth a watch. Thank you for joining us for this day in his story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in his story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.